I was asked by Tom Iovino over at tomsworkbench.com to participate in his Get Woodworking Week, Get Woodworking Week, which is this week. And so I thought I would participate, which is it Get Woodworking or it's Get Woodworking? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does it mean like, you know, it's a command, go get woodworking, go out to your shop and get yourself woodworking, or does it mean like go get some woodworking, like go to a store, go get woodworking, go get me some? Or maybe it's for people who just don't understand woodworking, like I don't get it, I don't get woodworking. So I guess we're all here to help you understand woodwork. Well, it sort of makes sense because the whole idea about this was to inspire new woodworkers, I think, and to help them out with new techniques, not new techniques, to help them out learning basic woodworking techniques. God. I am so sorry, Tom. I am just mangling your Get Woodworking Week. Let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so anyways, I'm not going to be doing my usual high-end woodworking on this video. I'm going to show you a good technique that you can use, and beginner woodworkers can use, and well, all woodworkers can use, and well, I use, and that's it. For the most part, woodworking isn't a very physically demanding activity. In fact, it's one of the nice things about woodworking is that you don't have to be very strong to be a woodworker. Almost anybody, no matter what age you are, can be a woodworker. And the big exception to that is that as woodworkers, we often want to use plywood, which comes in 4x8 sheets and is very heavy. I think like a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood, it weighs like 2,000 pounds easily. We like to cut everything on our table saw, but if you've got a large sheet of plywood, well, that's almost impossible. So what we need to do is cut large sheet goods down into smaller, more manageable sized pieces using a portable saw, and then we can bring it over to the table saw to make our fine cut. My favorite method is to use my truck. And that way, I don't even have to remove the plywood all the way when I get it home from the lumberyard. I made this little roll-around workbench that is the same height as my tailgate. My driveway is uneven. Sometimes I need to shim up a little bit over here depending on where I'm parked. I want to cut off a strip that it's 11 inches wide, but I'm going to cut it 12 inches because I always like to cut them a little oversized and then fine-tune them on my table saw. One of the most common methods is just to use a straight edge to run your circular saw along. I wouldn't recommend using just a board because the chances are it's not going to be perfectly straight. I picked up this system at the hardware store in the same area where they sell levels and squares, and this can either be for 4 feet or these two pieces joined together to make an 8-foot long straight edge. I need to know the distance of my fence to the blade on my circular saw. Mine is 1.5 inches. They might be different on other saws. Since I want to make my cut 12 inches from the end, I'm going to add an extra 1.5 inches to 13.5 and mark 13.5 on the other side. Now I'll bring my straight edge right over to that mark. This system actually came with 2 C-clamps, so you can just clamp this down to your workpiece. For this cut, I think what I'm going to do is bring this back and I'll support the cutoff on my workbench. I've got a fine-tooth blade in my saw so it won't chew up the plywood. So all I'm going to do is run this fence along this fence. Using a straight edge can work out really well, but it can kind of be a pain to set up and it can be a little bit time consuming. An alternative method, which I like to use, are these cutting guides. The first one I bought years ago is called the AccuRip, and you can still buy these and they work really well. An upgrade to that is one that Craig makes, and it's called the Rip Cut. Now the way these work is you custom size them to your saw using these 2 little clamp down bits. On the Craig system, it's these 2. Just tighten these down. And on the AccuRip system, it would just be these 2 thumb screws that tighten down to your saw. Now once you get these set up initially, you never have to change those again because they're set up exactly for your saw. They both have a scale that you can adjust this little fence here to the size of cut you want to make. So if I wanted to make a 12-inch cut, I would just line this up to the 12 mark and then tighten it down. On the Craig system, you just pop this up and then slide your scale over to where you want it. And it's real simple to cut your wood. You're just gonna hold this fence up against one edge of your board and run it all the way through. In the AccuRip, it would be this smaller fence that you'd run along. The drawbacks to using these are that you can't clamp your workpiece down so that this side is left unsupported and you just have to grab it when you finish your cut. And also you can't do very wide cuts with it. If you needed to cut down the middle of a board, say a sheet of plywood in half, you certainly couldn't do it with one of these. But I am going to clamp it down over here so that my board doesn't slide around while I'm cutting it. And you can make these cuts using sawhorses too. One method that's popular with a lot of guys is to get a sheet of this styrofoam building insulation. And of course the advantage here is that your workpiece is supported on both sides through the entire cut. Just raise your blade up so that it cuts through the wood, but obviously doesn't cut into your floor. But honestly, I'm not a huge fan of this system. For me, it's too difficult to set up a straight edge and to clamp it on with the styrofoam in the way, and using an edge guide is also difficult. So I think this system works out best if you're just going to draw a line and freehand the cut and not have to worry about clamping any straight edge to your workpiece. And those are just some of the ways you can break down sheet goods before you bring it into your shop. There's lots of different ways you can do that. Just work out a system that works for you. Well, thanks again, Tom, for inviting me to participate in Got Woodworking Week. No, Get Woodworking Week. Get Woodworking. I get it. Make sure to check check the description for links for all of the Get Woodworking activities and gala events. Thanks. I'll talk to you guys later.